Thank you for meeting me at Happy Hour. Once again, I'm super excited to be the host of this podcast. My name is Rashad Bowtie Mills. And for those not in the know, first time listeners, this podcast was really created about turning a negative into a positive, hence the name Happy Hour. I suffered with alcoholism for a long period of time, and I thought, how can I get something positive out of that negative period in my life and no longer meet me at Happy Hour at somebody's bar at 5 p.m. on a Friday, drowning myself with Hennessy, but it's yet dropping podcast episodes like this with amazing guests every Friday at 5 a.m. And I'll introduce him momentarily. Now, this gentleman is all of these titles. This gentleman is a minister, he's an entrepreneur, he's a certified life coach, motivational speaker. He's an all around good guy, a friend, a comedian. And for the purpose of tonight, most importantly, he is a new author. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Minister George Saunders to the show. George, thank you for being who you are and meeting me at Happy Hour.
Rashad, man, thank you for having me, and I can only return the favor. You appeared on my podcast, and but besides that, man, you're just good people. We talk privately. We in depth, deep stuff. It says iron sharpens iron. So hopefully, between one of us, somebody's getting sharpened somewhere, right?
I like the way that you talk. Now, George, if you keep talking like that, I might need to hire you as my agent. I like when you talk like that.
I got you, bro. I got you.
So
I'll be your
listen, let's
hype
go ahead.
man. Everybody,
Go
everybody
ahead.
need a
Go ahead.
hype man, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I,
So let's go ahead and jump into it. One of the last things that I said was you are a new author. And I know
Mhm.
that's a major, major thing. So just kind of tell me about the excitement that you feel about this title as an author and this major publication that you've been able to release.
Oh, okay. Well, the title of my book is called "When a Man Loves a Woman," and the subtitle is "How I Got It All Wrong." I This has been 12 years in the making. Some ups and downs, some fits and starts, um, some success and failures. Let me throw that in there. The subtitles probably changed about 12 times. It changed every year, but this is where we landed on how we got it all wrong. Basically started from a sermon I preached in 2009, and I've been always fascinated. That it's biblically based. It's about the relationship between Jacob and Rachel, and always liked that story. And I was always been attracted to it, pulled to it, and I decided to preach a sermon based on it. And the sermon was great, and then people afterwards, the guys kind of like gave me like the screw eye, and the
The side
women were
eye,
like,
right?
"Oh, baby, yeah, baby, I love it." And then somebody said, "This is a book," and it was like, "Ooh." Can I just be? It was like, "Ooh, a book." For two reasons. One, I didn't know if I barely had enough for a sermon, and for me, a sermon that's easy. You got a title, a relevant question, a text, 3 points and a joke, and I'm done. I'm not even. Sometimes I don't even have a good close. But man, it's been liberating. It's been exciting to the response that I got. Anytime you do something, you hope it's going to be well received and you're going to get positive feedback. But I'm sober enough, since we're at happy hour. I'm sober enough to realize that not everybody's going to like your work, not everybody's going to agree with everything you say, but I decided to be true to me, true to what I saw in the text. I'm very candid. There's some transparency there. Everything ain't for everybody, because I had one person like, "Oh man, I wanted more details, and or deeper." They said they wanted deeper and more, and then and I said, "Look, I." What does it say on Dragnet or wherever that they used to change the names, protect the innocent?
Mhm.
I left some stuff out to protect the innocent. But hopefully, it's something for anybody who's seeking, desiring, have, or want a better relationship.
Hmm.
whether you're male or female, young or old, rich or poor. Um, so I'm proud of it. I'm proud of it. And actually, I'm getting feedback like people want more. So we're looking at some other projects that's going to be based upon this.
Got you. So I want to go all the way back. So you said the title of this book, When a Man Loves a Woman and How I Got It All Wrong, was based on a sermon that you wrote 12 years ago.
Mm,
I'm very
mm.
curious, as I read the book, where were you at in your relationship status at that time? I'm very curious about that part.
At that time, I'm divorced. That was a singular divorce. That was my I had been divorced probably probably 15 plus years at that time. Well, no,
Mm,
maybe about 10 years. Maybe about 10 years, 12 years. I wrote that sermon. Um, I just like, that story, that it's a love at first sight story. And I was drawn to it. And I desire to be married again. Um, the Bible says that, not, I don't want to get too preachy on you, but everybody knows, it says that a man that findeth a wife findeth a good thing. There's a B clause to that, and it says, and retains favor with God. So I believe, and I can tell you my story going back to a whole bunch of stuff. I believe I have the favor of God on me, and wanted to ensure it and expound upon it. So I guess that was my next step. I believe in the institution of marriage.
mhm.
There's all countless studies and all types of things that will tell you the benefits of marriage. From a scientific point of view, sometimes from a social point of view, there are pros and cons, especially if it hasn't gone well for you. Some people may want to debate that. Subsequently, just be honest, I've been married and divorced since then twice.
Mhm.
And we can get into that. And I learned a lot about me. And and again, in chapter one, I suggest to anybody, or before you enter into a relationship, examine the relationship you have with yourself. That's key. I believe the healthier a person is as an individual, the healthier you can be as a couple. And a lot of times I'm guilty of it. I believe it's a common mistake that sometimes we're looking for others to fill areas of lack or need or voids in our lives. And
Mhm.
I don't think that sometimes we put undue and unnecessary pressure on other people that they weren't designed to do.
Mhm. That's a great point, but I don't want to get too far ahead because I have some of these
Okay.
questions actually lined up for you. I want to go
Okay.
back because in chapter one, you actually say something. And I want to ask you about this. That you talk about that you weren't a good role model for your son and your daughter. And I want to ask you, how did you get to the point of being so transparent to put that in your book? And when you were actually writing that in your book, was that a challenging moment? Because now you're opening up your life to the world and saying, hey, I really wasn't the best version of myself as a husband.
Mhm. Um, well, let me tell you, that got added probably toward the end
Okay.
of my manuscript. As you sat and I read, like, okay, that's in the origin, and I'm looking at the origin, and it's like, okay, it was, what's the term one use? It was vanilla. It was not.
Mhm.
It was okay. Okay, this is what happened. Blah 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 blah. But again, why are you writing this book, George?
Mhm.
Ask, if you ask yourself, why am I writing this book? And part of it was, um, I felt like, to me, I could have been a better example
Mhm.
as, a husband, as a father, um, to my kids. And since then, because I got married the second time, and I'm going to prove to my kids that second chances are possible, and God can do anything, and
Miracles,
blah blah
right?
blah blah, miracles. And
Right.
And I was like, "Oh, Daddy, say bye to this so Miss so and so." And I just so that's probably that was a 12th year edition, if you want to say that wasn't in the first one. And I just, you look back and if anybody, there's some shoulda, woulda, couldas in life
Hmm.
and some things. But let me say this, and I say this: there's no perfect parent, there's no perfect child, and we got to understand we're not perfect people. So, and then you gotta, and then other times I believe you just have to trust God. That nothing happens is that God does not evil ordain or allow. So for whatever reason, this is my course that I'm on. Um, and if not getting ahead of myself, but sometimes it's about making better choices.
Hmm.
It's about making better choices. And I didn't always do that when it came to the relationship model because I don't want my daughter second guessing some guy's intentions
Hmm.
or what does this really mean. Um, I used to listen to the Steve Harvey show, or listen to, and they had the Strawberry Letter, and honestly, so it's like I don't want my daughter to be writing a letter to anyone, and I don't want my son to be the subject of one. So let me put on pen to paper, even if my life didn't example. Let me put to pen to paper where I stand.
Hmm. Well, what else about the relationship with Jacob and Rachel that was so attracted to you, and you wanted to make them essential characters in the book, other than the fact that it was love at first sight?
Oh man, everything he did. I mean, I just basically when I first started this, it was when a man loves a woman, it was the Jacob's paradigm.
Hmm.
And you look at the things he did. Like I'm gonna tell you, I remember doing that sermon, and I say this in the book. I think in the origin, I remember my one of my first point was that Jacob had a job, and I said, brothers, before you ask a woman her name, her phone number, anything, you need to have a job. And when I mean a job, I mean a legal source of income. And the women rose to their feet and was out. Some of them never sat down. The fellas, you get the folded arm and crossed leg. Look,
The
the rest
response
of
was
the way.
drastically
Yeah.
different from the guys,
Oh
right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yes, definitely not all of them, but there's come on, because you hear the horror stories, you hear the if you have female friends, man, baby, I'm just trying to get myself together, some bad stuff. I've had some bad luck, blah 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 blah, and then when you get emotionally involved, then your judgment gets cloudy, and next thing you know, it's 6 months, 6 years later, he's still trying to get on his feet. And I said, go get on your feet, and man, because I was dating, I was in the dating scene, and you would hear some of the horror stories that women would tell you, like, one lady's like, dude told her that his mother was living with him. Turned out he was living in mama's basement. He 40, 50 years old, living in mama's basement. And look, I don't misunderstand me. I understand things happen. But I think that as a man, there's certain things you want to be able to present, that you want to be able to bring to the table. But it starts with having a job, and it's not just money; it's all the other things that hold it down,
Mhm.
a job and things represent, that allow you to be quote unquote head of household.
So Jacob was working. What else was it about? What else was it about Jacob and the characteristics that really made him somebody that you wanted to have in the book? So he was working. What else?
Oh my God. I, I think probably not to get too far ahead. You just look at the stuff he did. Like, he offered to work. So his uncle comes back and says, "Hey, you've been working with me for a month. You haven't asked for your wages or the terms of your employment." And he comes back and says, "Hey, I'm gonna work for you for 7 years for your younger daughter, Rachel." That's how in love he
Mm.
was. And time is one of the most precious commodities that we have, that
Absolutely.
we don't always have. We don't, okay, we have control over it, but then we don't, because you don't know how much time you actually have. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if I'm gonna live to, you know, well, about, tomorrow's not promised. We can play all the
Absolutely.
numbers, and so where you spend your time is where your treasure is. I believe that. And so Jacob at that point is 70 years old, and he's like, I'm willing to work 7 years for you. He's not like, look, bro, I'm 70. Let's do this little 2-3 month thing so I can get busy trying to start a family. But he did 7 years, and then it says that those 7 years seemed to be but a few days to him, which is awesome. Just a few days. That's how much in love he was. And it's like, wow, I wanted that type of love, to be in love at that level, and other things, and some of the stuff, without, I don't know how far you want me to go, but some of the stuff he had to deal with,
Hmm.
when things started going sideways. And he stayed. I mean, not, well, I don't think he didn't have a choice, but the fact that he stayed, because, man, look, some of us, I talk to brothers, I talk to people, we go through relationships with this, I'm gonna call it a fire escape mentality. As we traverse it through this relationship, we always mark in the exits, because if
Mm.
something happened around the corner, I got an escape plan. And that's just the fact of the matter. And normally, that sometimes I think that means that if you always marking the exits, that questions that, I think, how committed you are to the process. Because, next thing you know, it's like, he got mad and he walked out because I burnt the greens. Nah, baby, he didn't walk out because he burnt the greens. He was
he
just
he
looking
wanted to
for an
leave.
excuse.
He wanted to
Eh,
leave, right? And
yeah,
that was the
eh,
thing that prompted him to leave.
that was his. Oh my God, what's the day? The day Tuesday. Let me clean my language out. That was his poor excuse,
Hmm.
to do what he was just waiting for, a moment. So, cause man, we always got to have a good excuse. We just can't
Hmm.
say, "Look, I ain't into you no more. I gotta go." No, it's gonna be something. I can't believe you.
Hmm.
I don't eat. I don't eat pork, and you made me a whole rack of ribs, type of thing, and I'm out of here.
Hmm.
I mean, we laugh, but honestly, some of the poor excuses we can get, or the lack of commitment. Let's just say that the lack of commitment that, I think that we have, and especially sometimes in the minority community. I don't want to beat up on us too much, but it's a whole lot of baby daddies,
Hmm.
but not a whole lot of husbands.
Absolutely. Absolutely. George, I want to make a transition and ask you this question. I'm actually on page
Mm.
5, first chapter of the book. And as a therapist, this obviously is near and dear to me. You said my recent diagnosis of adult ADHD has given me a greater insight into my actions and choices that I made. It also explained the procrastination experience in completing the project. And I just want to talk about that. How important is it in terms of mental health and then relationships?
Oh, mental health. Let me tell you, I am an advocate for mental health. A lot of times, especially in the minority community, that it's taboo to have a therapist or a psychiatrist, and we tend to isolate ourselves and put ourselves on island, thinking we're the only one that has issues in our relationships, the financial issues. Just every day you're not in utopia.
Hmm.
You're not like, I skip to work every day, skip home, skip around the house. Man, we have days where we just and we that was part of my reason for my podcast, that sometimes we struggle emotionally.
Hmm.
We like to pretend we always got it together, especially that's what a strong black man does.
Hmm.
And especially to my brothers, I have accountability partners, which what I am as a life coach, but I'm not as people that I employ, I pay or contracted with. but just good brothers in my life that, these people hold me accountable. So my ADHD, that diagnosis, man, was I'm gonna tell you, life changing, exhilarating, because it started making sense out of things that didn't make sense before. Man, why did I struggle to stay focused? Man, I'm praying
In
and
the
I'm asking God,
relationship.
in life with
Mhm.
everything.
So I should have been a little more specific. Specifically, how important was it
Relationship.
learning about your mental health, right? The ADHD
Mm.
diagnosis in terms of relationships. What were you able to discover about George as a result of gaining a greater sense of your mental health?
Okay, probably number one is some people that have ADHD suffer from what, and you can probably give a better definition: emotional dysregulation, right? I could go from 1 to 100 like that. And then what would happen is that afterwards, the collateral damage to going to 100, like, then you end up with a lot of unforeseen, and let's just say unnecessary harm, that you say stuff that, ooh, I shouldn't have said that. That was cruel. I felt all of it at the time. So with the ADHD, they say, and you can break this down. That part of your brain, the front part of your brain that acts like a governor,
Hmm.
that knows how to pump the brakes, does not function in my brain. So I would, is because anger is a valid emotion. However, you don't always have to act on it or be driven by it.
Hmm.
So I had to learn to do things. You know what? And it sounds, type of elementary, but you know what? I had to learn that. You know what? Sometimes I just need to breathe.
Mm.
While you saying whatever you saying to me, or you whatever I'm reading in your text, your email, I gotta go, because I heard, it's been said, and you can correct me if it's wrong. 90 seconds. That 90 seconds, that
Hmm.
that initial fit of rage, the intensity of it, that initial intensity is about a minute and a half. If you can control your response, your reactions, your anything for at least a minute and a half, um, you can get some better results, because then, you know what, and I need to think through this. And again, that governor part, because some people have that automatic ability. Okay, I'm angry, but if I do this, here are the consequences. They weigh all the potential outcomes. I don't know all the potential outcomes until it's too late, and then I'm dealing with outcome that I don't and I didn't intend or wish not to be dealing with.
Hmm.
So that helped me to be better. It's certain things I understand about myself, as far as attention level, as far as being able to be. I think I told you about. I had good intentions sometimes with relationships. I wasn't always intentional.
Mm.
um, One thing I've read or heard in another podcast I listened to is, and it sounds crazy, but being able to prioritize relationships. Now, conceptually, I know my wife should be the most important thing to me,
Hmm.
but in practice, I didn't always, you know, your boy can't have your same priority as your wife,
Mm.
your certain relatives, certain people. And even though I knew it in theory, it didn't always reflect that in, like, oh babe, I know you pregnant and you ready to go ahead and baby, but I promise, man, I was going to go to the game with him, and it sounds I'm that I'm exaggerating, but at certain times that my priorities didn't always reflect, as far as who was the most important person to me and who should be. And that's one thing I talk about Jacob. Everybody around Jacob knew his love for Rachel. It was no question, no doubt.
It was
It's
pretty.
not
It was
like
pretty evident and apparent, right?
he made it apparent.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one thing I just, so I've gotten better at. I'm aware of some things, and there are other things, and but that's helped me, and it understand some of the choices I make as far as the people I choose to get involved with. Um, I talk about certain things that, sometimes, man, we get involved with people. We know off the bat it's probably not a good fit. They may be great people, and I'm a nice person, she's a nice person, but that doesn't necessarily make us nicer together. If I, and there's certain things that, and but okay, but if I overlook this and I do this and she forgets for that, then we'll make it work. And sometimes, man, we're trying to force a square peg into a round hole when it
Mm-hmm.
comes to relationships.
So, George, this is a perfect segue to my next question. So, you talk about that you could be a nice person, the young lady
Mhm.
that you're with could be a nice person, but not necessarily nice together. And I wrote this in my notes, this mathematical equation, and I want you to tell me about this. This comes from page 8 of the book. We convince ourselves that their strength and our weakness will balance out. However, when
Mhm.
you bring one half of a person and combine it with the half of another, thinking it's equal as a whole, you're wrong because you still must divide the two. And I thought that
Mm.
was pretty profound. Kind of expand on that just a little bit more.
Okay, we think that, okay, strengths and weaknesses. So let's say my strengths are her weaknesses, and so when we come together, then it gives us 100. We're at 100, but still you're dealing with two people in a relationship, so it's still there's still some needed to divide at some point. I almost put this in a book, and I kind of regret not doing it. Let me take the movie of Jerry Maguire. You remember Jerry
Hmm.
Maguire?
Absolutely.
And Tom Cruise looks at, I think it's Renee Zellweger, and says, "You complete me." And man, tears are flowing in the theater. Women are. That is probably one of the most unsound statements I believe you can make. I think it's like with preaching. Sometimes preacher will say stuff that sound good, but it's
Hmm.
not sound doctrine. That sounds good, and who wouldn't want, like, oh my God. But that's nobody should complete anybody. You need to be, and I put in the book, be as complete, be as whole as an individual. That doesn't mean that you're perfect, but be as complete, as whole, as full, as fulfilled, as content as a person. Now, if I were to change that sentence around, you don't want nobody. I don't encourage people to look for people who would complete someone else, but some people complement other people well.
Mm.
We complement one another, man. And sometimes, you got a nice lady beside you, da, 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 and she makes you look good. I don't care. You can have on a suit from Walmart, but with her beside you, she just compliments you well. So you're looking for people that should complement whatever talents, gifts, isms, schisms, the good, the bad, the ugly that you have. But I think we're looking for people to fill voids and to heal areas of brokenness. And that's part of, again, my poor decision making. I want to come in and I want to heal and I want to fix and repair. Um, I don't, if I can say this, my business that I do, I'm in restoration repair of like
Hmm.
home improvement. I'm out of the home improvement business. I'm out of the people improvement business as far as relationships. Um, I don't fix people anymore. I fix tile. I can fix your grout. I can fix your bathroom. Can't fix you as far as being in a relationship. Now, as a life coach, you encourage and you hold people. You become that accountability partner. And sometimes we're looking to change people and fix people. If I could just fix this one thing about them, then they would be better or they would be happier. And those are mistakes that I've made. Those are some critical mistakes that I've made.
Speaking of mistakes, I want to go here with you, George. You actually say something in the book that I think it's really important, and it really says a lot about you as a person and this incredible level of transparency that you have. You titled this book "When a Man Loves a Woman" and how I got it all wrong. So,
Mm.
what about you was a strong enough sensation and a strong enough urge to say, I've had some failed marriages, some failed relationships, but you know what? Those very same things that disqualified me qualified me to write this book in which I know
Mm.
people can actually benefit from it. Like, what was that thing for you that says, despite what I messed up, I still have enough to write a book?
Well, it's not simply about book, it's about life.
Mm-hmm.
I honestly believe that failing at something does not automatically equate to failure.
Mm,
Failure occurs when you fail to learn anything from that experience. And honestly, sometimes we can learn more, glean more from a failure or something than we would have if it succeeded. You
mm,
look at people who have businesses. Sometimes they've had multiple failed business before they get that right business
mm-hmm.
because you know what I learned, you know what, I got to manage my first business. I just think money was going to keep coming in, so I didn't manage my money properly. I didn't make good forecasting decisions, and so I lost that business, but I still got that entrepreneurial bug in my system. And
Mm-hmm.
so we try to take those things and we build upon it. Some people, you just hit a home run right off the bat. We make mistakes along the way. And so, I struggle with, how can I write this book? As times I walked away from it, times I was frustrated in my current relationship. But the more I felt like, those same things that would, in some cases, it does disqualify me with some people. The fact that you say you're divorced disqualifies you. I may not get to speak at certain places, certain churches, certain events because you got the big D word and you got multiple D's. It's like you got multiple L's, and so how you gonna write a book on relationship? However, um, I believe I could, if I could take some of it, and say, hey, here's some things I did. Here's some examples that if you can learn from some of the mistakes that I've made, learn from some of the lessons, share. If I share with some of the lessons that I've learned, hopefully that may cause someone else to not to have to go down the same path that I did. To suffer the same,
Mm-hmm.
all the things that come along with it, the death of something, the embarrassment, the shame, the regret. Tell me when to stop. You know what I'm saying? All those
Mm-hmm.
things that come along with, because no one enters into a marriage of, well, I don't believe you should enter into a marriage with a planning to fail. You stand before God, you make these vows. Uh, this is my vow to you, and now you got to go back and say, Yeah, I know I told you that that was Mrs. Right times 10. Well, what happened? And then you gotta stop. Well, what had happened was, but again, I believe that just in God's gift, one of the gifts is just being candid, and I think we need more candidness. We need more transparent. We need more authenticity
Mm-hmm.
in life, especially within the church. Because I'm not gonna go too far off the rails here, but sometimes when we come in church, we want to look holy, smell holy. We got a good suit on, the fresh cologne. We got a shower, and we want to project like all is well. And man, it's that's not always the case. And we come in there and we got our fake smile on, fake everything. We come in camouflage.
Mm.
We put our camouflage on. We come around. We can run around, fall out, snort, snot. We kick over trash cans, and we go. We leave out just as broken as we came in. So, and I just wanted, I found it through my involvement with men's ministry or ministry period. There are times when I've decided to make myself vulnerable because this book makes you vulnerable, or it was some vulnerable moments in there. But I've always been amazed by the response I get back from from that audience of people that may be in that proximity when I do take those moments to be vulnerable. And I think, it takes a little we're gonna call it testicular fortitude.
Absolutely.
You know what I
Absolutely, it
mean?
does. Absolutely, it does. You mentioned the church, George. You literally stole my thunder because I was actually going there with the next question. As a minister and somebody that has been in the church, I would guess the majority of your life, what does the church, modern day church, what does the modern day church think of divorce? And I'm very curious about your
Ooh,
response on divorce within the modern day church.
ooh. How do I? That is, man. That's a
You
setup
have carte
question
blanche to
there.
say what you need, my friend.
No, I look. Okay. God hates divorce. Yes, if that's yes, that's there, and but God is a God of grace, and God is a God of grace and mercy.
Mhm.
And is divorce? I don't encourage it. I mean, look, I'm not an advocate for divorce. However, I also believe that God, how can I say that? I don't know the words to say. I believe that there are more reasons for divorce other than adultery, and legitimate in God's eyes. I'll be honest about the domestic violence, as me being as a perpetrator and me as a victim. I don't think God will want you to stay in a situation where someone's being abused or violated physically, mentally, emotionally. Uh, uh, so am I obligated? I know for better, for worse, for rich or poor, but I think, look, when you're in a situation where your health and your life is in safety, I don't know how do any child of God advocate that you got to stay there and stay in a situation where your life may be lost or worse. So I mean, I'm probably not qualified to get into a deep theological thing. I think some of it is interpretation. I think some of it is what we were taught that we may not clearly understand. There's certain things that we just the Bible says this, or I heard the Bible says that. But I think that you got to understand that the time in which it was written and the certain context things. But the word of God is true. But I look, even if you say that it's wrong, I believe, hey, God can cover a multitude of sins. Forgive, so if I was wrong, and again, it's certain things that I'm not rushing people to divorce court. I mean, I advocate for staying, especially if there's you got kids involved and certain things involved. But for me now, like for abandonment, if a dude walks out on his family and has no intentions to return, is that woman obligated to
Mm.
to to remain married? You know, if so those are certain things. And again, I'm probably not qualified, and I'm trying to not to get in trouble. But I think in God's eyes, in my opinion, in my understanding, in my research, my teaching, what I've been taught, there more than one reason for divorce. No, does God like it? There's God's perfect will. Let me say this, and then there's God's permissive will. Now, the
Mm.
perfect will part, no, I would probably his perfect will be like, no, I prefer not this to happen. In his permissive will, yes, can God like, okay, this is, but again, I don't believe anything happens in this world that God has not either already ordained or allowed.
Mm.
Um, and if he allows it, then in certain ways, then he ordains it. I've known people to get divorced and go on and maybe remarry and have long, healthy, happy marriages. I know people
You
to
mean
get
to the same
divorced.
person?
No, no, no. I'm saying
Okay,
people who, like, let's say a couple gets divorced and the man
gotcha.
goes on, he remarries and she remarries, and they both live happily ever after with someone else. Sometimes we just make bad choices. Sometimes we don't listen to God. Sometimes we do what we want to do because we big and bad and grown and over 21, and then we want God to bless it when you kind of knew that it wasn't the right move. Sometime, and we like to over spiritualize things, and we figure we throw uh, Jesus in the beginning or the end, then it makes it godly, and that's not always true. Let me say that. Let me shut up before I get into
No, no, no,
a
you're
deeper
absolutely
hole.
fine. I have to jump in and ask you this question because this is very important. And this wasn't one that was actually on my list. But how do you know when you are picking a spouse that you ultimately want to marry? How do you know that this is the person that God sent to you? What would be your advice on that for somebody listening to the podcast?
Ooh, I don't believe that there's any one answer to that. Um, I believe, and especially as I get older, um, I believe one of the common threads that runs through everybody is our desire to have peace. Most people want peace. I don't want to live a turbulent, topsy-turvy lifestyle or life period. And so, but here's the thing. I think the ingredients that requires for the me to make, if you call peace a cake, the ingredients that are in my cake that represents peace may not be the same ingredients that yours does.
Mm,
Some people pieces, I gotta have this level of job and this amount of income, live in this neighborhood, and
mhm.
other people can live in some places that most people would probably prefer not to, and still have peace. So the question is that, again, do we complement one another? Do we have the same goals? Are we moving in the same direction? Do we have the same shared values? Um, do we have a common agenda? Um, a lot of times, there can't be, I say this, there should not be competing agendas within a household. I had a couple reach out to me, and it's crazy. It's crazy. I'm giving counseling, marital advice to people, but I had a person reach out to me, and they having some struggles, and I said, what's y'all like? I talk in the book about your vision. Where do you see yourself? So I said, what's your vision for your marriage? I'm like, do you? Well, I said, do you have one? And they's like, yeah, we have a vision, and it's not other. And I said, well, is it written down? And she said, no, it's not written down. I said, well, that's not a vision. It says write the vision and make it plain. And I think that to me, if I was to, in my terms, in the book of George or whatever, that I think the make it plain parts is that what's the plan to make the vision come to fruition?
Mm,
You got to have a plan. I used to do this when I was and I was a sales manager. My salespeople come, have that monthly meeting. How many units you're going to sell this month? I'm going to sell X number of units. Or what's your goal for this month? I'm going to sell X number of units. And
mhm,
I ask them, is it written down? And if they say no, then that's not a goal.
mm,
And then once you write the goal, okay, how do I need to? You start breaking that down into smaller and smaller parts that require different actions as to, because you don't want to just write something down. I'm gonna stick it in the drawer and just expect it to happen through osmosis. Now, sometimes, yeah, maybe you'll luck up and it'll happen. But I think God, and I'm gonna tell you, go back to this and not to get too far off. Um, I remember when Evander Holyfield beat Mike Tyson, and for all the boxing fans,
mhm.
and Evander Holyfield wasn't supposed to have a chance, and he shocked the world. But I remember that afterwards he's still in the ring, and they're like, "Evander, are you surprised?" And he's like, "No, I'm not surprised. I knew I was gonna win." He said, "Because I had a plan." And she's like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." And she tried to brush him off of it. He's like, "No, I had a plan." And he said this, and this is how I remember that. He said, "God blesses a plan." And sometimes we need to
Mm,
sit down and come up with a plan. I was telling somebody the other day, a lot of times as couples will spend so much time, energy, resources in planning a marriage, their wedding. Their wedding. They plan their wedding. I'm gonna have these. I'm gonna get this person. This gonna be bridesmaids and we ushers and and the flower boy and the flower girl and the ring bearer, and we're gonna have this music played at this time. And they spend so much time planning a wedding and very little time planning a marriage.
Mm.
I plan detail, how my hair gonna be, and who's gonna be there, who's gonna sit where. But yet we don't put that same energy and thought into what is my marriage gonna look like? Not just next year, what I want my marriage to look like 5 years from now, 7 years from now, 10 years from now. Now, again, these are all things I know now, but again, I spent a lot of time in planning wedding days, very little time really talking, discussing about, baby, what does marriage look like to you?
Mm-hmm.
And then you hear people get up and then the wife ready to have kids, and you're like, oh, I don't want no kids.
Because that was never discussed. Now, I
That was
want
never
to say this,
discussed.
George. When you talk about the wedding as opposed to the actual marriage, one of the things that I instantly thought about is I don't think that we as a society were actually taught that, because it's this bigger goal to actually get married, and we think of just the wedding day, the pomp and circumstance, and everything that goes along with that. And I don't think that we are taught what happens after that. So it was very critical that you talked about the planning. Now, to stay with the word planning, I think that the planning would be a little easier if, in fact, we see our spouses through these 4 seasons. Kind of break it down, the 4 seasons rule.
Okay. That was a thing where, basically it came down. I don't believe sometimes, people they date for a couple weeks, maybe a couple months, and like, oh, I'm in love, she in love, let's get married. My advice is that I believe that you should see a person in all 4 seasons,
Hmm.
meaning you should winter, spring, summer, and fall. And ladies, this is just a joke, but sometimes y'all are not the same in the wintertime as you are in the summertime. But
Don't
that
get in
goes for the
trouble.
guys too.
Don't get in
But
trouble,
but I'm
George.
no, but I mean, but sometimes people are not the same. In the summertime, it's hot, it's warm. In spring, especially me in the spring, man, life is great, and it's getting warm outside, and there's things to do. And then there's the summer, and then it starts getting cold and daylight savings time, it get dark early. And especially, I live in the south now, but and when you're in the north, November, December, January, February, you go out, do what you got to do, and you come back home. You're not out and about. And so I believe, so it started with, I think you need to at least wait a year before you consider getting married. Um, and then, secondly, not just chronologically, but let's look at the seasons that life brings. Because, man, people different. When they different when they got money, and they one way when everything is going great. But how do they handle adversity?
Hmm.
How do they handle when life happens? Because life is going to happen. Um, I'm gonna say this: how do they handle conflict? I'm gonna stress that. How do they handle conflict? Because conflict is going to happen. Now again, season that first 3 months, he can't do no wrong, you can't do no wrong.
The honeymoon. Hmm.
And you're in that phase where everything they do. Oh, I don't mind their belching. I don't mind their flagellation. If that's what I'm saying, that their flagellants. None of that stuff. But then after things start calming down, because everybody can put that good spin on, they can hold it together for 90 days. But then it's that season two. Oh man, we starting to see a little, okay, and little stuff. Why'd you say it like that? Why, and certain things happen. And so pay attention to conflict, because do little things become major things?
Mm.
Are you not speaking to one another for 3 days because y'all can't agree whether they were kale or collards? The car was blue or white, and everybody's mad. Those important. Those are signs that I ignored before. Like, and that then it doesn't get better. It gets, it typically gets worse, because then certain things go on. So I think it's important, but you need to see people in all seasons, life, good, bad, the indifferent, and pay attention. I'm gonna say that. I think I put this in the book. Pay attention to your intuition. I call them to my spidey senses. Um, Most of my relationships that failed, um, generally, it was stuff I chose to ignore, or chose stuff they chose to ignore about me. You know, certain things you see, certain things, don't make excuses, address it. You know, sometimes we think that, well, we'll just, if I love one enough, it'll get better. If I just turn the other cheek, it'll get better. And especially when you consider marriage, I try to tell people try to deal. Look, you can't may not cover everything, but major things. Sometimes we have what we call somebody. We were talking today. There are non-negotiables. You should have these are non-negotiables with a relationship. This is a non-negotiable for me. Um, we got some red lines that we need to lay our markers down, and I think that's important.
Hmm. Yeah, I want to go to a little bit further in the book, George, and I'm actually on page 37 now. And I really like the way that you worded this. We waste too much time in dead end relationships. For example, a guy might find you in the fine china section of the store, places you in the cart, sort of rolls you around in the cart, trying to decide if he wants to keep you. And when he doesn't, he does not return you back to the fine china department, drops you off in tires and batteries. You find yourself hurt, displaced, lost, and bitter, and the person searching for you can't find you because you're not where you're supposed to be. Tell me a little more about that. And I love the way that you worded that.
I like illustrations. I think illustrations speak. Um, have you ever been in a store and you gone up to something and you see, oh man, something catches your eye, like, oh man, that's a bad shirt. You go over and you look at it, feel it, okay, da da da. And then sometimes you go, well, I'm not sure, but we'll stick it in our cart. And we go on with our shopping and traversing through the store because we really came there to get one thing, and then we saw this shirt. And you could do it in the grocery store. Have you ever picked up stuff in the grocery store where
Hmm.
we trying to decide, do I want this, do I want this, and then okay, I'm ready to check out. Am I going all the way back to aisle, 15 to put this back in its proper place? And I'm guilty of it. I don't want to speak for nobody else, but what we do, we stick it places. We stick stuff and we just drop it off. I'm gonna stick this here. I ain't taking it all the way back there. And sometimes that's what with relationship, when especially with I'm not saying with women, but sometimes women, you kind of know something ain't right, but you go along and you involve in a relationship, you're involved in a relationship, and it's not just a trip around the store, but sometimes you're involved in a relationship for an extended period of time. And I talk about normally, man, if you for me, you kind of know that this one got potential, or something about this one here that has my interest and my curiosity peaked at a different level. And you normally know that within short order. Like in the book Jacob, it took 30 days. He like ready to propose. He's ready to be betrothed and this and that. Now the 30 days. It don't take us long. However, if you with a dude and 2, 3, 4, 5 years later, he's not sure about if he wants to marry, if your desire is to be married, and he's like, well, I don't know, or he giving a lot of excuses, that may not be the right relationship. And then you find yourself, and sometimes you got to listen to what people say. Like, it's like if you get with somebody and they're like, look, I don't want to get married. And you go, okay. But soon as I fix him my specialty dish, soon as he
Hmm.
gets my collard greens and ribs and sweet potato casserole, I'm gonna change his mind, or I'm gonna love him, or I'm gonna do all these things for him. And then you find yourself later, you're like, well, how come we've been together so long and you ain't said nothing about marriage? I told you I didn't want to get married. So sometimes we need to listen with our ears and not with our
Yeah.
heart. And that's what happens. And then, but sometimes we get involved with people we know we shouldn't get involved with. right off the bat. I think I put in there where an person says, she told the guy, if you can't afford me, put me back on the shelf. I don't have time to play games with you, none of them type things. And we've done that again in the store. You see something, go over, you look at it, man, that's bad. But what we got to do? You got to flip that price tag over. And it's like, I love them shoes, they bad, but they not $900 nice to me. That's how I can't afford that. And we put them back on the shelf. And sometimes you gotta look at relationships like, as a especially female when it talks about value, that if he can't afford to treat you like the woman that you should be treated, the godly woman, or whatever your values are, that if you can't afford to do that, put me back on the shelf. Don't play with me because you're one of a kind. It's not like you looking at a shelf full of whatever, or a rack full of this. You are one of a kind. You're a one off, God designer's original. And sometimes while you wasting time in this relationship that is there, that it ain't going nowhere, it hasn't gone anywhere, and yet the person who may be looking for you, the person that you may be exactly what they want, who they're looking for, that you're unavailable, and you wasting time, and then 5 years later, 10 years later, you sitting there and it's like, I wasted 10 years of my life or X number of years of my life for what?
Mm. So, George, we're almost at the end. Before we do, again, I want to tell people that are listening to the podcast, Meet Me at Happy Hour, to go get your book, When a Man Loves a Woman and How I Got It All Wrong. I know it's available through Amazon. I got my copy through Amazon. I know locally in Florida, I just saw that. I believe it's in some bookstores in Florida.
And it's at Bookmark, and it's going to be with talking with a few other bookstores. But right now, if you're in the Jacksonville Beach area or Neptune Beach, if you're probably be familiar with that, man, I'm a beach bum, and I happen to find a bookstore like probably less than 50 yards from the sand that agreed to take a few copies of my book, and we're gonna see what it's gonna do, man. I'm excited about this project. I'm excited to see and believe in what God is going to do. I apologize sometimes, man, if I ran on, but man, I'm passionate about relationships. I'm passionate about health, about the dynamics of relationship. Rashad, you're a licensed therapist. I'm more of the jack leg, no shingle hanging from my front door type of therapist. But man, I love people. I like to know what makes people tick.
Mm-hmm.
And part of it started with, I need to understand how I tick and how I work. And I think, you know, um, I talk about things like trying to make people happy, or looking for other people to make you happy. Be happy with yourself. Be content with yourself. Learn to validate yourself. Learn to love yourself as you are. You know what I'm saying? We all got areas of insecurity. And I believe, because I say this, if you don't love yourself, can you give or receive love in a healthy, proper way? And so, man, it starts with loving yourself, believing in yourself, forgiving yourself. Those are all the things to chapter one. I had to go through, man, look, we make mistakes, and we got to learn to forgive ourselves. We need to learn to forgive some others. So again, we can be the healthiest, happiest person that we can be.
I like the way that you said that. So, George, we're at the end of the podcast. Meet me at happy hour. And again, we want to stay around this theme of happy hour. Will you take a shot with me on this Tuesday night?
A shot? What do you mean, from the foul line? Man, my jump is a little off right now. I only got like a 2-inch vertical. But
so,
go ahead, bro.
so listen, I love to ask that question to people. Obviously, people don't know. Obviously, I'm not drinking. So the shot is, take a shot at answering these questions.
Okay.
All of these questions are going to be centered around marriage. I'm going to give you 5 questions, and I don't grade on a curve scale, George, and I
Ooh,
grade pretty harshly. All right, so I'm
man,
going to ask you.
man, your screen's starting to freeze. No, I'm just kidding.
All right, so I'm going to ask you some questions and see if the wonderfully talented and brilliant George Saunders can get some of these questions. All right, here's the first one. According to an old tradition, what should a Scottish bride do on the day before the wedding? A, to eat a chicken. B, to wash the feet. C, to hug her parents. What should she do a day before the wedding? To eat the
Wow.
chicken, to wash the feet, or to hug her parents?
All right, can I phone a friend?
Listen, no lifelines. No lifelines, no
no
phoning a
lifelines
friend,
in this, man.
no
All right,
smartphones.
no dun 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 dun. Man, I'm gonna go with wash some feet.
Ah, George, you are 1 for 1, my friend. You are
Okay.
1 of 1, my friend. Great answer. Great answer. Okay. Let's go with this one. According to an old English rhyme, a bride should wear something old, something new, something borrowed, and something to bring good luck on the wedding day. Is it A, nice, B, big, or C, blue? According to an
Blue
old English rhyme, a bride should wear something old, something new, something borrowed, and then
and
something what?
something blue. Something blue.
Something blue. George, you are 2 for 2. And the
Right.
nerve of me to try to stump somebody with your intellect. I have a lot of nerve.
Man, please.
So let's see. Third question. People often throw what at married couples in Northern Africa to wish for fertility? A, wheat, B, figs, or C, money? People often throw what at married couples in Northern
Wow.
Africa to wish for
Northern
fertility?
Africa.
A, wheat, B, figs, C, money. Don't get nervous now, George. You're only 2 for 2.
Oh my God. We figs and money. I'm gonna go with
Can George take it 3 for
I'm gonna
3?
go
Let's see.
I'm gonna go with I'm gonna go with figs.
Ladies and gentlemen, this man is hot like Southern fish grease. 3 for 3. That's your new
Oh wow.
nickname, Southern Fish Grease.
Southern Friskies.
That's your new nickname. You are
Hey,
hot. All right, can
right.
George go? Can George go 4 for 4? At her wedding, Melania Trump wore a $100,000 gown designed by who? A, Coco Chanel, B, Christian Dior, or C, Karl Lagerfeld? At her wedding, Melania Trump wore a $100,000 gown designed by who? Coco Chanel, Christian Dior, or Karl Lagerfeld? Lagerfeld,
All right.
excuse me.
Since I'm a never Trumper, I'm probably gonna get this wrong, but we're gonna go with say it was not Kristen Dior. What's the other two?
Coco Chanel or Karl Lagerfeld, if I'm saying that
Oh, it
correctly.
got to be probably 100 grand. We're gonna go with Coco.
Okay, close, but not the right answer.
Kristen.
Listen, Christian Dior. Christian Dior. So you're still
Yeah.
batting pretty high. So right
Okay.
now you have what? We're going 3 out of 5. Can you finish
Yeah.
4 out of 5? And even with my math skills, I think that's 80%. Hopefully, I
Okay.
made my elementary teacher proud with my use of percentages. All right, so let's go with this. Oh, this is an interesting one to way to end. Let's see. I want to end with something. Um, I want to end with something good for you. I gotta
Man,
really,
you trying to
really.
stump me? You trying to stump me, huh?
All right, here we go. Here we go.
Okay.
Which of the following is often considered bad luck to do for a couple before the wedding? Which of the following is often considered bad luck to do for a couple before the wedding? A, to lose the rings. To B, memorize the vows. To C, see each other.
See each
C.
other.
That was actually easy. No, I'm sorry. It was way too
Yeah.
easy.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
Way. Yeah.
I
Way
didn't want you
too.
to get that. All right, let's go with just one more to end it here. This one that was way too easy for you, George. Yeah, way too easy. All right. Here we go. Which month is often considered bad luck to hold a wedding as an old superstition? Marry in May, rue the day. So is that A, January, B, May, or C, August?
Ooh.
This is tricky. Which month is often considered bad luck to hold a wedding as an old superstition? A,
What?
January, B, May, or C, August?
I don't believe it's May. I'm going to go with about 50-50 between January and August, and we're going to eeny, meeny, miny, mo, catch a piggy by its toe, catch a lot, let 'em go. Eat mother. If your mother, I'm sorry, my mother right there. Then we're going to go with August.
August. George, that is incorrect, my dear friend. Now,
Okay, man.
here's the interesting part of this. You have to remember, Mary and May rue the day. So conventional wisdom says, well, it couldn't be May because May is in the answer. In fact,
Yeah.
May is the answer. So
Answer.
again,
Okay.
George, thank you so much for taking
Hey, man,
5 shots.
appreciate you.
You took 5
Okay.
shots, so you should walk away staggering.
Okay.
Thank you so much for taking 5 shots with me, and most importantly, meeting me at happy hour and really talk about a serious, serious topic that impacts a lot of us, relationships, and how you were vulnerable, you were candid, honest, funny. All of those qualities are a part of you anyway, and talking about some of the things that you learned throughout your, we won't say failed marriages, marriages that you learned after the fact, and now you're giving all of us information in this book, When a Man Loves a Woman and How I Got It All Wrong. Go to Amazon.com, secure your copy. And then I'm not sure how people will want to contact you if they want signed copies. How can somebody contact you and also follow you via social media?
Um, um, we can follow me through the name of my podcast, cast, which is called Cracked Ribs, and cracked is spelled with a K. So that's KRACKEDRIBS at gmail.com, crackribs.com. You can send me an email. I'll be glad to reach out to you. Try not to put all my information out there, but I'll be glad if you want a signed copy. You can also cash at me at that same Crack Ribs, dollar sign Crack Ribs. I'll be glad to mail you a book. There's no extra charge. It's the same price as if you purchase it on Amazon.
Mhm.
I'll be glad to sign it. I'm actually got to go to the post office tomorrow and mail off, I think, 6 or 7 copies of books that people have ordered. Man, I'm excited. I'm just trusting God. In this case here, I'm trusting God and going to not just sit back, but I'm going to be an active participant in what I believe God is about to do.
Again, George, thank you so much for meeting me at happy hour. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
All right. Thanks, buddy.
All
All right.
right.
See you.